Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Jesse, CTO at Broadleaf Group, and with me I have Michael with HPE Aruba. We're here to talk about how AI is approached with how. I'm sorry, guys. Uh, we're here to talk about essentially how HPE Aruba approaches AI. With me, like I said, I have Michael. Michael, if you just do a quick intro on yourself, kind of your background, what you do at HPE Aruba, and we're off to the races.
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Michael Taranelli. It's nice to meet you all virtually. I'm happy to be here to talk to you today a bit about Aruba Central and where we can find those intersections with artificial intelligence. So today, Jesse asked me to come on board and talk a bit about some of the basic building blocks of artificial intelligence from a agnostic sort of point of view, and then kind of get into where we will see AI, machine learning models, Gen AI models, large language models start intersecting in Aruba Central. So we'll have a few PowerPoint slides and also some live demos, so that should be pretty good. As for me, I've been with the company for about 15 years. I've done it all. But for the last year or so, I've been really focusing on our go-to-market for Aruba Central. So thanks, Jesse.
Look forward to it. Look forward to it. You want to kick us off with slide one, and we can go from there.
Sure. Let me share my screen. Oh, I am sharing. Let me launch into my PowerPoint then, and we will get going. Okay. Can everybody see my screen? You see that, Jesse?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. All right. Well, great. I'm Mike. It's good to be here today. And literally, if you have any questions for me after you watch the video, Mike at hpe.com. Go ahead and scan the code and link in with me if you want. And let's jump into it. We call this Aruba's Explainable AI because literally I'm going to explain some of the AI basics, and then I'm going to go into this term in the industry that we so often hear called AI ops, okay? And I'll give you a bit about Aruba's take on AI ops. And then I'm going to go into some central demo where you'll see AI in action. So first, just to get the conversation started, and this might be dating myself a little bit with some cheesy screen grabs of some old movies. I think everybody knows the Terminator. I mean, Terminator is pretty well known. Star Trek is pretty well known. That's Hal in the top left there from 2001 Space Odyssey. And what all these sci-fi shows and movies and countless others right up to present day have in common, the theme is some type of artificial intelligence, whether it's in a robot or a ship or Skynet in the case of the Terminator. It has an AI that becomes self-aware, and will it like take over the universe? Will it take over the planet? Will it destroy humanity, right? And for so many decades, the imagination of everybody has been captured by AI when we kind of dive into these movies and novels, right? And is what we're finding out is as we get into present day, the AI that we've seen in the movies is in many ways becoming a reality, right? ChatGPT, that's one screen grab of a well-known consumer application that's driving the AI hype cycle today. X has Grok, you have Copilot from Microsoft, Google Gemini, and many, many others out there, right? And it's fascinating what they can do, these consumer-based artificial intelligence programs that we all kind of have fun with, right? And it's really got the world thinking about what is going on in the world, and will AI take over my job? Will it, create for me and do all the things that I'm used to doing as the human being in the room? And, that's a valid concern, I guess, depending on what sector you're in. But at the end of the day, the reality of the situation is artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all that goes into AI really comes down to math, right? It's just math, statistical math. It's a giant stats class, highly complex, don't worry, I'm not going to give you the math lecture today,
No math
but
today.
no math. I'm okay. I got as far as like linear algebra in high school. I could hold my own. And there are some linear algebraic models out there, but it's all about these multi-dimensional spaces, right? And distilling every single point of data down to a dot on a graph and predicting where that next dot is going to land. So it's an interesting topic, Jesse. Will AI take over the world? I don't know. I was listening to Elon Musk the other day, and I heard him say that he believes by the end of this year, we'll have an artificial intelligence that's as smart as the smartest human.
Interesting.
And by 2030, we'll have an artificial intelligence that's as smart as all of humanity combined. Wow, that's staggering. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what the next few years holds.
Yeah. With great anticipation, we'll watch closely, right?
Yes. Now, Aruba AI, our aspiration is not to be smarter than all of humanity. Our aspiration is to help you run your network more efficiently. So somewhat more modest goals. So moving on, I think it's good to start with the basics, right? And right now, I'm not going to talk about Aruba. I know everybody kind of comes into the artificial intelligence conversation at different levels, right? And we want to try and meet you where you are. And I know that there's some people out there that are fascinated by the space as I am, and they probably know a lot. And there's other people that maybe don't know how it all works. They enjoy using it, but they don't quite know what's going on. So we'll take a few minutes to cover some of the basics. And I think, when I like talking about the basics is I like to jump into human intelligence, right? That's kind of where it all starts. That's us, right? What do humans do really well? We learn, we reason, we solve problems, we create, we make beautiful art and music, we adapt, right? Things that humans are really good at are those like innate capabilities. We call it, in air quotes, the ability to read the room, right? That empathy, that social awareness, that emotional intelligence. Until very recently, artificial intelligences were not very good at emulating the empathy side of things, the emotional intelligence. But I say that because I do see some artificial intelligence now have therapist mode or romance mode and all sorts of funny things out there, right? So they're even starting to encroach on that space. Now, moving into artificial intelligence. The interesting thing about AI, for as much as we string those two letters together, the definition is so broad, it's almost vague, right? Human intelligence exhibited by machines. So that's why at Aruba, when I talk to my colleagues and, we're going out to talk to our customers and our partners, and we're going to talk about AI, I'm like, stop saying AI. It's too vague. It's too broad, right? It's a broad term. So at Aruba, we try and take things a level or two deep when we're explaining these concepts. So the first place we go is machine learning, of course, right? And machine learning is if you think of AI as like the category, right? And then everything below AI is kind of like a subdomain, right? And machine learning is the first big subdomain. And it's the notion of achieving artificial intelligence through systems that learn, to find patterns in a data set. Really, is what we're trying to do is recognizing patterns of data by example, okay? Algorithms that will effectively find patterns and make predictions about what might come next.
Math.
Okay?
Yeah, really good math. Really,
There's that.
really complex math, but yes.
There's that math.
I'm tracking.
Okay, so maybe this Venn diagram will help kind of continue the story here, right? So the dark blue circle in the background here, that's the domain. That's the subject matter category, right? And then we hop into machine learning, and that's a lot of where Aruba will play, okay? We are going to leverage what's called supervised and unsupervised machine learning models. And I'll teach you about that in 1 second. So don't worry too much about it. Now, I want to talk a little bit about deep learning, just to mention it, okay? Aruba doesn't play with deep learning very much at all, okay? A deep learning employs something called multi-layered neural networks, which is a fascinating space, but I don't have time to talk about it right now. It's very prevalent in image recognition, sequencing DNA, trying to find cures for cancer. It uses huge data sets. And it's a much more complex models that are much more compute intensive, much more than what Aruba needs to kind of find anomalies on our customer networks, right? So we don't do much with deep learning, but when it comes to large language models, for sure, right? Large language models there's a lot that goes into large language models, and I'll just scratch on the surface. Very obviously and very intuitively, it's that conversational interface into any artificial intelligence. It's that ability to go to ChatGPT or similar and type in a conversational question, right? It's not like you have to craft a perfect set of Google search terms, right? You can talk in conversational English. As a matter of fact, so many of these AIs now have like little buttons that you can tap the microphone and say, hey, tell me about the best way to make pizza dough above 3,000 feet or something like that. Some obscure query. You can just like have conversational English, right? And it's really cool. But more than just that conversational interface, these LLMs are incredible because they have the capability to index volumes upon volumes of documentation and pull out specific elements of documents that you need. And I'll show you some examples of that in a little while in our demo, where instead of having to like look up a chapter and verse in a user guide, the large language model has the capability of telling you specifically what you need to address an alert or a problem on your network. And the last one is Gen AI, right? A lot of people hear Gen AI. It's becoming more well-known now, right? But it kind of burst onto the scene. You started hearing it about 18 months ago a lot. It became another buzzword unto itself. Gen, meaning generative or to generate, right? And really what that means is a Gen AI model creates something unique, something that didn't previously exist. And that's differentiating from machine learning, right? Machine learning, as we're going to find out in a second, relies upon the model being trained to give a response. Whereas Gen AI kind of does some of its own reasoning and figures something out and then creates something new, right? And I'll show some examples of that in a minute. We'll do a fun little demo of that as well. So here's machine learning, right? And I kind of zero in on this quickly because this is where a lot of Aruba models have to do with machine learning. And then we also use Gen AI and LLM. But to understand that we are trying to recognize patterns of data by example, rather than programming Aruba Central with specific rules, okay? That's what machine learning is all about. This notion of rule-based computer programming is kind of gone now that we're in the world of AI and machine learning. So we use things like the concept of algorithms, which are effectively called models in AI, right? And these models are designed to find patterns so that they can make predictions. And the incredible thing is a lot of people, when they think about the proliferation and explosion of AI in the last decade, so often we go to compute, right? Whether it's cloud computing and the infinite scale of the cloud, or a company like NVIDIA and their amazing GPUs, right? These hardware processing units that allow the computations to be done in hardware and memory so quickly. People always go to the hardware. But a big amazing thing about AI is so many of these algorithms, so many of these models that are used by software engineers and data scientists are up on the shelf, and they are basically reusable, right? So the ability to code models is much quicker, right? We can get things to market much more quickly because we don't have to write brand new code from scratch every time we do something, right? And it's just very powerful. I like to talk about apples and oranges, right? I have an example about that in a second. And you could take a off-the-shelf classification model, right? A classification is looking to label something. That's what a classification model does. And I can use the same program that classifies an apple and an orange to tell me on my network, is that an IoT device or a non-IoT device? Is that a switch or a router, right? You can take that same code and apply it to almost any industry, any vertical. So it really allows the software engineering side of AI to move at much higher velocities.
Makes sense.
Awesome. So just real quick, in case you don't know what I mean by rules-based code, here it is. We all know from our basic, computer science logic class, the concept of an if, else then statement, right? If then else statement, right? So here I'm talking about apples and oranges. So I'm saying, hey, if the weight of the fruit is greater than 150 grams and its color is red, it's an apple. And if it's less than 150 and its color is an orange, then return orange. But, that's kind of the end of my rules. Anything else is an unknown.
This would not catch a cutie.
No. It would not catch a kiwi. If I flung a banana at it, it wouldn't. Well, Mike, write a rule for a banana. Okay, but I can write 1,000 rules, 100,000 rules, 1,000,000 rules. I'm still going to trick this system, right? So, and plus your code becomes inefficient, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your code becomes miles and miles long, just line after line, and nobody wants that, right? It leads to inefficiencies. Machine learning code looks more like this. This little Python script, using a common machine learning library called sklearn. And basically you just define, you don't have to be a code expert here, but you define a model, right? A classifier model, okay? And then you apply a algorithm to the model. In this case, the algorithm is called fit. And then you feed it the parameters. You'll see, I'm giving it, some weights and some colors, and then the model kind of goes to work and makes prediction, right? Just to show you, this is not a code class, but just to show you that we expect just the velocity of our ability to solve different unique problems that maybe we haven't even imagined yet is going to be much easier, much more efficient in the world to come, right? So it's going to be exciting times to see, where the industry lands in 5 years in terms of how we operate our networks.
Agreed.
Now, real quick, just a couple more terms. This is another definition for machine learning, but I just want to mention supervised learning and unsupervised learning because they contrast a little bit with Gen AI, a little bit, right? So supervised learning is the notion that a computer is provided with a labeled set of data. People always say, what's a labeled set of data? And basically the way I describe it is it's the answer key, right? I just showed you on the last slide. I gave you a weight, a color, and then the answer was the type of fruit, an apple or an orange, right? So basically so many models for the last many years have been based on supervised learning, right? Where we train a model. So you hear people in the industry saying, oh, we train the model to do this, or we train the model to do that. As soon as you hear the word training, they're talking about supervised learning. And then when you contrast that with unsupervised learning, it's a different type of machine learning. There is no training, okay? In this situation, a system looks at a set of data, okay? And the data is unlabeled. There is no labeled training data, but it looks at data, whether it's streaming by or you're kind of mining data, and it tries to find patterns, looking for patterns in the data. It tries to organize the data into failure domains and success domains, and then it looks at all the failures and tries to find, patterns among the failures. And then that leads to what we call insights. So if you can imagine a computer network that you're operating in your office and common problems that we might run into with common services, underperforming WAN links or DHCP isn't working, or there's a problem with DNS today, very common examples. finding those anomalies, right? Finding those insights by looking for the patterns in the data. That's another type of machine learning called unsupervised, right? And these models are all based on what we call features. And I always call that out because when you're talking to a data scientist and you're talking about features, you're not talking about the latest whiz bang feature on your iPhone or your Android. Not a software feature. It's an attribute or an element that goes into a machine learning model, right? And there's the model, right? The models are what predicts the outcomes and what recognizes the patterns, okay? So just a little basics course for you. And at the end of the day, let's check this out. You don't have to. There's no quiz at the end. Don't worry. Okay. This is meant to be for display purposes only. The colorful boxes along the top are families of AI models, and the white boxes below in the flow chart are model types. Okay. This is a fraction of the models that are up on the shelf. So you remember before I said, hey, there's a lot of models that are just done and they're on a shelf, and you can pull a model off the shelf. You can customize the code for your particular project and off you go. And that's kind of why one of the reasons, in addition to hardware, why AI is exploding in the industry, right? So I make this point because you hear a lot of talk if you listen to podcasts and news reports and read articles. People are always talking about, hey, the model. And effectively, the model is the data scientist's toolbox. Okay, that's what the data scientists use. All right. So, Jesse, that's the end of AI 101 for the audience. Now we'll talk a little bit more specifically about Aruba. But how is that? Any questions there? Are we tracking good so far?
Doing well. I don't have any questions so far. It seems pretty straightforward. I appreciate
Awesome.
the lesson.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about Aruba and how our data works, right? We call it telemetry. Telemetry leads to real AI insights. So what is telemetry? Telemetry is all the information that we get off of the access points, the switches, and the gateways that we manage, right? The metadata. Like we know what's happening in every single packet that's flying across the network. The switch and the AP and the gateway becomes the sensor effectively on your network, right? That's how I like to think about it. And more or less, all that data, all that telemetry, that metadata gets pulled back into a data lake where we can then run machine learning on it, right? This is our AI toolbox, if you will, right? We have any number of models, right? Whether we are doing looking to make peer connections. One of the great things that we can do when it comes to this data lake, this concept of telemetry, is understand trends between customers. There's no kind of sharing of data or anything like that, but we can see, is there something happening with DNS systemically across many customers, or is that an anomaly just for one customer, right? So, and then we can make reporting on that. We can say, hey, you're hitting an anomaly that none of your peers are hitting. Or we can say, hey, something's going on in the industry. Maybe there's a cyber attack or something like that, right? So a lot of interesting things, and I could go on for days about this kind of stuff. But the outcomes, right? What are the outcomes? AI insights, right? Alerts. So what's the difference between an insight and alert? I like to call insight a recommendation, okay? It's the notion of, hey, if you can tune your network slightly differently, you're going to get a really good benefit. You're going to get a really good performance boost, say, for example. But you don't have to. It's just a recommendation, right? Versus an alert, which is saying, hey, there's something going on here. There's a problem. It's happening now, and we should address it now, right?
Proactive versus reactive.
That's right, right? And we're going to give you both with Aruba Central. Now, there's this term in the industry called AI Ops, okay? And AI Ops is, I think, coined by one of the research firms. And so it's not, I think all vendors kind of say AI Ops, right? So therefore, all vendors define it differently. So I'll just give you a little insight into when we talk about AI Ops at Aruba, this is where we're going, right? And one notion is in the field environmental issues that are so small and untraceable and undetectable that no one customer would ever see the actual issue, right? But at scale, through that data lake, through that telemetry that we pull back, we may see, hey, there's a trend, there's something going on. There's an IPv6, gremlin out there that needs to be fixed, and unless we saw the data at scale, we would have never found it, right? So Aruba is always doing quality control, right? Trying to make our cloud offerings better, make Aruba Central better, make our products better by sort of looking inwardly on ourselves to these environmental issues, and how can we therefore fix our code or write our code better to prevent some of these issues. Okay, so customers will never really see that, but it's something that they will experience by working with us. Versus this one that I just talked about, right? It's a concept of those AI insights, those recommendations. All right, and good examples. I've already mentioned a few. I talked about DNS or DHCP or underperforming WAN. Another good one is AP coverage holes, Wi-Fi coverage holes, right? So if an installer doesn't hang access points on your Wi-Fi network in the correct place, it might lead to a coverage hole, right? That's not really the problem of Wi-Fi, except customers don't know that. They'll say, hey, wireless is bad, wireless is down, something's wrong. Well, actually, you have a coverage hole, right? We just need to move this AP from this quadrant of the floor to that quadrant of the floor to fix the problem. But anyway, my point is this: being able to predict things and make recommendations for things that are actually outside of our control, meaning it's not really a problem that Aruba can solve. Aruba is not the DNS vendor. We're not the DHCP vendor. We're the network vendor, right? But we can tell you about when those other mission critical systems are having problems. And one of the great things about Aruba Central is that our SLA for doing that is 5 minutes or less. So Aruba Central is going to become much more of a real-time alerting tool for your whole network and all critical systems. And then the last one, of course, is what Aruba can control, right? Meaning, hey, that's more recommendations, but hey, maybe there's some code, better code, more stable code that has less security vulnerabilities. We can make suggestions that it's time to upgrade. We can tell you, hey, if you tune your network a little differently, put in some probe threshold value for a Wi-Fi network or some kind of loop prevention on a wired network, that will give you more stability on your network. And those are things that you can tune directly in our products, right? So yeah, we kind of cover AI ops, across 3 different tent poles there. So hopefully that makes sense.
It does. It does.
All right, we're getting ready to hop into the demo, but I wanted to give you a little peek at this notion of the concept of reasoning models, right? I talked to you about things in terms of alerts and insights, right? Well, what if we could take those alerts and insights and kind of put it in like what we call a supervisory agent framework, where we have many different AI agents now looking at all these AI-driven alerts and insights that we've been driving to try and make a higher level correlation. And that's kind of where we're going next. Like, the alerts are great, the insights are great, but we want to do even more thinking. And that's kind of like that hockey stick of where AI is going, that you're getting into these reasoning models that's going to lead us to root cause or more comprehensive network recommendations to make things better or more amazing, right? So it's kind of where we're heading in the future, beyond just alerts and insights. And it's going to be a fun couple of years to see where we end up there.
Nice.
All right. So really no more slides, just, the slides to tell us where we're going. So let me hop over into my demo environment. I'll break out of my slides. Well, here, I'll just give you a preview, right? We'll take a look at firmware recommender, Wi-Fi 6, and maybe some of those alerts, right, that I can show you, those network anomalies. So let's grab my browser. And looks like I timed out, no big deal. I'll log in very quickly here. Since this is a video, hopefully we can edit this part out. But anyway, back in we go. All right. So here we are in Aruba Central, and I'm going to spare everybody the tour of what we're calling. This is our new look and feel, and you of course can talk to your experts about that locally if you want a broader demo. But I'm going to kind of just zero in on a few interesting things that I touched on. So let's hop into my Miami site, and you'll see here the little thinking man, the gearhead. It's kind of the universal symbol for, hey, there's artificial intelligence happening here, right? And this is where we're going to see a lot of those insights or recommendations that I was talking about. And one that I'm really proud of is the switch firmware recommendation. It's very interesting because for those of you that maybe have been using Central for a while, you may recall, the way a firmware recommendation happens is there's no AI model behind it. It was just somebody at Aruba would go and modify the current recommended code version with no forethought to what your network topology was or what your disposition towards security vulnerabilities or bugs or what your kind of rules of engagement are, right? Or how your network was behaving. So now these firmware recommenders are actually backed by AI. Okay, meaning they're looking at your network topology, they're looking at your coverage models, they're looking at the actual equipment mix that's running on your network and what version of code makes sense for your network, Mr. Customer, say Coke, and your network, Mr. Customer, say Pepsi, right? Because maybe Coke has 700 series access points and maybe Pepsi has 300 series access points. They're all great, but they have different code recommendations, right? It's not a one size fits all. Also looking at your client capabilities, what types of client mix you have on your network and how are those clients using the network, and that drives code decisions, okay? So now you'll see, this model, it's saying, hey, this is what you're running and this is what we recommend, and it'll give you a little recommendation reason, right? So in this case, it's basically saying the code you're running is, at risk of some security vulnerabilities, right? So we recommend you upgrade. So customers are really enjoying this feature and the fact that it's backed by AI and it's not just a one size fits all recommendation. Every customer will have a different recommendation that's unique to them. And Jesse, one thing that everybody asks me, so I know people are probably thinking this right now, is, hey, Mike, can I get like a link in here, a deep link to, what the vulnerability is or what, the reason code or something like that? And I have asked for that, and that's something that'll be coming in the product in the future, I believe. But we'll give you like a link over to Aruba Threat Labs to let you know why we're recommending, version 13 versus version 11 there, for example. So
You actually, yes. The next question we're going to have is, does this have other recommended reasons, or is it just the top one that shows up in this list?
Yeah, for this one, there's probably, listen, good question. There's like 16 features that are feeding this model, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there might have been other driving factors, okay? I can tell you that one of the most influential features on this model is actually code popularity, right? Meaning, as more and more of our customers are migrating towards a certain version of code, the model becomes more likely, I'll say, to predict that version of code for the next customer,
More
right?
weighted.
Yeah, more weighted. I hesitate to use the word weighting, because I don't want to oversimplify the AI models at play, but yes.
A lot of
And
math.
so
Well, a
I
lot of
do
math.
believe, I do believe other factors are at play here, but it's probably choosing the most compelling factor in this situation. And
Understood.
security vulnerabilities is something that's really top of mind to customers. It's almost like a no-brainer. Like if there's a CVE out there that has an active exploit and we can fix that, we kind of have to at least let you know about it, right? So, and this is
Exactly.
nice though. You don't have to sit there watching Aruba threat labs and CVE databases because our AI will predict it for you. And we have this. I should add this. I'm looking at switches here, right? And I'll read the fine print for you. Okay. This is an AI-driven feature that supersedes existing recommendations in Central Classic. So I should just point out, I'm in what Aruba is affectionately referring to as New Central. It's the same Central. It's just our new look and feel. Okay, it's not a new program or a new platform. It's just an overhauled web front end. But for customers that are still using because there's a toggle button that
Right.
you can you might have saw me click it. I'll show you here in a minute. I'll show you right now. There's this little toggle button here that you can go back and forth between our classic. So this is Central Classic. And then you hit this toggle button and you go into New Central, right? So basically that fine print was telling you, hey, it might look different in Central Classic. And that's okay. That's okay. New Central is where all our customers are going to end up. As a matter of fact, maybe I don't want to say too much, but soon we're not ever going to get rid of Central Classic anytime soon, but we're going to basically encourage our customers to really start using New Central as a default. So, but right now we're still in kind of we're calling it public preview.
Makes sense.
Fancy way of saying beta, maybe, but yeah, it's available to everybody, but it's like public preview. So,
Oh, looks good.
yeah, so I encourage everybody to go click that bit there and see what you see. So anyway, I digress. A couple more insights, and we can open up to questions. I want to find a specific one. I think this is it. Enable Wi-Fi 6. Yes. Here it is. Okay. So let's hop into the Bengaluru site. And this is, listen, I want to talk about the AI, okay, but it's a bit of a Wi-Fi story. So Wi-Fi 6. Everybody in the audience may not know what that is or why that matters, and that's fine. Just take my word for it. All you need to know is Wi-Fi 6 is a marketing name for a standard. The standard happens to be called 802.11ax, but that's just jargon, right? But the standard allows for improved throughput performance on your network, okay? It does many other things, but let's just leave it at that. Better throughput on your network, okay? So what is this telling us? It's basically saying, hey, Mr. Customer, go enable Wi-Fi 6 and you will have 10% better throughput performance on your network. Well, who wouldn't want 10% better performance? It's a no-brainer. I'm just going to go flip the bit to turn on Wi-Fi 6. Like, why wouldn't I turn on Wi-Fi 6, right? And the interesting thing is, and my demo is slightly imperfect, okay? Because down here in the actions card, I'm going to read it to you because it's kind of small. It says, no clients detected that are likely to have connectivity issues for Wi-Fi 6. But that is the reason why you wouldn't turn it on if you had clients that had connectivity issues. Now, my demo is imperfect because my demo is curated. It's in a fancy lab out in Santa Clara, California, and it has perfect clients. It has brand new, Linux clients that have the most updated chipset. They're all Wi-Fi 6 already. But imagine your networks. You might have 5 or 6 different versions of Zebra scanners on your networks. You may have any number of audio-visual equipments on your network that are older, that may be working perfectly fine, but they could be 8, 9, 10 years old, right?
Yeah.
Those chipsets aren't going to support Wi-Fi 6. So that is where you would see a listing, Jesse, of the client names that would be impacted negatively if you turned on Wi-Fi 6. And that's really what I want to make the point. This is where AI makes a difference, is when we show you useful information that is actionable. Okay. It no longer becomes pie in the sky and architecture. It becomes, hey, if I know that I have 5,000 clients on my main campus network and only 100 of those clients have incompatibility issues with Wi-Fi 6, well, if I know what those clients are, I can go deal with them. I can give them a different network. I can fix the drivers. I can just simply replace the clients. Then I can turn on Wi-Fi 6 and I look like a hero because I've delivered, elevated performance to my customers when they weren't even complaining about it, right? So that's really where Wi-Fi hits the road. So I think this makes a really good
Yeah,
example.
it's a very compelling story. So it's very, for
Yeah,
me, it's the customization. It's specific to the environment that it pertains to. It's not, everyone at once. It's essentially your data, your network, your devices, your users, your everything. And that's
that's
when we
right.
start. That's
That's
really
right.
what the power is.
That's right. So let's take a different look at things, right? I showed you two insights. Those are kind of like things that you kind of have the option to do, but you don't have to do. Let's take a look at alerts. So maybe I'll go into Miami. I think I was just in Miami. Let's go back to Miami. So we're going to hop into Miami here. This, by the way, is our solar system view. In case you didn't know, Jesse, this is the sun, if you will. And
Yeah.
these are the planets kind of orbiting the sun. And this is how we kind of navigate in and out of things. So I'm going to go into the alerts planet. Okay.
All right.
Show you a specific alert. Let me do a quick search here and see if it's there. It looks like it's, so let me check the cleared alerts. There it is, max associations. So I want to talk about this. And you know what, before I talk about it though, let's take do I have this somewhere? I'm checking my other screen. Let's see if I have a look at it. I want to give a little demo here. Give me one moment. I'm going to pull something up. Actually, you know what? I'll do this at the end for fun. Let's just stick with my main demo.
Right.
I'm going to go into the action card here. Okay. And there's two things going on this action card. And it looks just like text right now, but let's break it down. The root cause. An old Aruba Central, Central Classic, the root cause I just highlighted in blue, that's what you would get. Association failed because max client threshold limit reached. Thanks. What the heck is that telling me? Really, right? This is where Gen AI comes in. Remember what Gen AI is. It creates something unique that didn't previously exist. So meaning the root cause for this customer will be different than any other customer. This is the impacted network. Okay, this is your rate of failure. This is how many hours this problem has been happening. Okay, that's a Gen AI model telling the customer much more fine-grained information about where that problem is and why it matters. Okay, so it's much better than that vague single bullet root cause. All right. But was where Gen AI models get really interesting is when they intersect and work in concert with large language models. Okay, so and that's where the actions card comes in. So I'll zoom in on that, right? And basically, is what we're doing here, Jesse, is going into user documentation and pulling out those, 7 or 8, mouse clicks that you have to do to get to the spot where you have to tune that counter, right? Tune that threshold and set it to the right value, and the problem goes away. In this case, we're going to increase the max client's threshold from default, up by 25 or whatever we're going to do, right, to make the problem go away. So that is valuable because if you think about the concept of network operations, so many of my large customers have the architecture group, right, who sort of thinks big picture, 5 years down the road, looking at vendors, what their capabilities are. Then they have the engineering group that kind of builds a solution, and they kind of have a mastery of the technology, whatever it is. And then there's the operations group that they need to be jacks of all trades, right? They're working in an operations center. Maybe they don't have direct access to the equipment. They're not always certified or expert in every single vendor that they're supporting. Well, wouldn't it be great if, those operations folks don't have to go and do a Google search for a user document every time there's some new problem that hits, right?
Very
Here
easy.
you go,
Yeah.
slash right there and fix the problem. Now, the next question I get, Jesse, is that's great. That's awesome. Why not just give me a button, like a fix it button, right? An easy button. Yeah, that's true. We call that a closed loop insight. They're out there. We've demoed that for customers. Certainly within our capabilities, so many customers have rules around change controls and things like that we haven't really enabled too many of those closed loop insights, but they're out there, and it's certainly something that we can do, and we're going to do more of in the future. So, yeah. Did you have a question there? I'm sorry.
No. I was agreeing. Like that's amazing. And yeah, that change management thing makes sense to me. If you're, whoever the user may be, they may not want that change to be very easy, right?
That's
Because you
right.
have to go through a process to have that enabled or changed and approved. So I can appreciate that.
Yeah, that's right. So it's definitely an interesting sort of conundrum, right? What you can do versus what customers are willing to do, right? And some customers have lower risk tolerance and they're happy to click the button, and other folks, it's just it's against regulations. If you're in the banking industry, finance, military, government, that type of thing, you just can't easily make changes. You have to vet those changes. So
So it's very hard for a lot of us. I just want to fix it. I want to make it better, right?
Yeah, the easy button, I call it. So and then you have other good information here. You have the impact card. It seems benign, right? But you mouse over these little iconographies and get additional statistics about the problem, and there's all kinds of incredible things. And I could go on all day, Jesse, but I am conscious that this is a recorded message out to the masses, and I just wanted to open it up and see if there's any discussion or closing thoughts we want to have, or if there's anything else I could show you. You could just shout it out.
I mean, phenomenal job, right? So lot to see here, a lot to dig into. I think really the winning, the answer really is like, this specific Aruba Central and its AI insights and everything that's being done behind the scenes essentially leads to a better experience. It's ultimately what we want, right?
Yeah.
The speed to resolution, the speed to, even detect a problem, that's the whole point, right? How do we make it easier on the user, easier on the individuals that are actually managing the environment? How we just, as you said earlier, the easy button. And I see a lot of that within this, right? So, you have the proactive, there's the reactive, root cause analysis is in there. You've got the, you need the automated, remediation steps, like that's in there, right? So it seems like it's a very well baked, product that continues to mature. I don't have any questions for you guys. I want to open it up for the audience to see what questions they may have.
Great.
Right.
Thanks,
All right.
everybody.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Again, Jesse, Broadleaf Group, Michael, HPE Aruba. We're here to answer any questions you guys have. Happy to help. Thanks everyone.